Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for part two of our webinar series about hormones, the hormone connection wellness strategies for perimenopause and menopause. I'm Dr. Mary Ojo Cairns. I have here with me Lena Landis, and we're excited for you all to be here on this journey with us. We're just starting the webinar a couple minutes early, so we'll give, or a minute early, really. So we'll give a few moments for others to join, and then we'll get started. Lena, thank you for being here. I'm so excited that we continue or going to continue this conversation.
Me too. I think it's such a great topic. And I know from my own experience, so many friends and clients of mine have a lot of questions. So this is fun that we're able to provide this to both of our communities.
Yeah. And we have right here, we have a very, as you all see, I'm at home. I have a little guest that just popped in. So this is a very low-key event, one in which we hope that everyone engages. If you have questions, you're welcome to raise your hand. We can get you unmuted if you want to ask it out loud. We have our chat also open. You can ask the questions in the chat, and you're also welcome to also hold your questions to the end. Whatever you want to do is fine with us. Again, this is very low key. Our main goal tonight is to get questions answered and answered with factual answers, correct answers that will help you in your decision making and also help you answer those things that you may just be wondering about. So if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so I'll start the presentation off today. And then afterwards, like I said, if you want to ask questions in between or after I finish, that's fine. And then Lena will continue the presentation. And I'm just going to really start with talking about how to optimize your hormones. Oftentimes, you hear the word balancing, balancing, unbalanced. You hear the word optimize. And what does that really mean? We all produce hormones. We are hormonal beings, not just with our sex hormones, our estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, but just all body systems are controlled by hormones. And so sometimes these hormones can be at different levels depending where we are in our day, where we are in our cycle, if we're still cycling, where we are in our lifespan. And so those different levels can impact us in different ways. And the word unbalanced is kind of, I think, a misnomer when we're talking about hormones, because there's not necessarily balancing as much as there is appropriate levels for symptom relief or symptom prevention or just where you are in life. And so oftentimes when we're talking about hormones, what most patients are referring to me as hormones are their sex hormones. And so that's estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. Testosterone is a female hormone. It is a female sex hormone. And so when we're doing hormone therapy, therapy to help replace or therapy to help supplement these hormones, you can have estrogen alone therapy. You can have estrogen and progesterone therapy. There are ways to have therapy for the receptors, the holders of these hormones in our body systems and our organs without the actual molecule. So you can use medications that just stimulate those receptors, or you can use testosterone, you can use all of the above. And so historically, hormone therapy in the form of estrogen comes in pills, patches, gels, pellets, creams, pills that you can put in your vagina, and then also rings. North American Menopause Society and the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, they do have recommendations on when to start and when to stop hormone therapy. But as we have learned more in these last actually 10 years of how not only hormones impact women, but learn more about old studies that were done in the early 90s and the 2000s, learn more about how those studies weren't necessarily correct. Um, the opinion about when to stop, when to start hormones has really changed. And so it's more so not a hard stop, but really a conversation that you should have with your provider, with your healthcare provider on what are your symptoms and what are you trying to achieve? What are your health risks? What is your health status? And how would that be impacted if you're using hormone therapy? The biggest thing that we're concerned about when we talk about estrogen therapy are blood clots. Biggest thing we're concerned about is breast cancer. But those conversations, no matter if you have a history of blood clots or if you have a history of breast cancer, you still need to have a conversation with your healthcare provider about what can I do and what I can I not do. Estrogen and progesterone therapy, again, you can get these in many ways. You can get it as a combination. You can get it a combination pills, combination patches, or you can use just that estrogen along with progesterone on top. Now, what does progesterone do? How is it impacting our estrogen? Well, your estrogen is helping with a couple of things to prevent hot flashes. It's helping to help keep your skin nice and plump, helping to keep your vagina nice and lubricated. It does have an impact on your energy, some on your libido, how you store your fat. Progesterone is a wonderful hormone to add to the therapy to help you make that estrogen work better. It has a side effect of helping you sleep when you take it at night, but it just helps the estrogen work better. Historically, have given progesterone to women that are using estrogen that have their uteruses. But women without their uteruses should be on progesterone also because you're going to help that estrogen work a lot better. And like I was saying earlier, there are some medications on the market that work on our estrogen receptors, but they're not actual estrogen hormone medications, but they act on those receptors very well. And you can get those as oral pills or vaginal suppositories. And then we have testosterone. Now, there is no FDA approved dosing for women in the US. There's FDA approved dosing for women in Canada. There's FDA approved dosing for testosterone in other countries, but there's no FDA approved testosterone for women in this country. That does not mean that testosterone is not important and is not a vital hormone. It is a very vital hormone. And again, I think we're coming to a place in hormonal and menopausal medicine in which we're understanding we need to have these conversations with women about why testosterone is important. And women need to advocate for getting testosterone because this is a vital hormone in helping your body and how your body places the fat around itself. So your fat is no longer centrally placed when you're using testosterone. It's moving to other areas. It's helping with your mood, with your energy, with your libido and desire. So it is a vital hormone. And it can be given in any of these ways, but generally for women, because there's no FDA approved testosterone, and you're either in this country using a male version at a very low dose, or you're getting it compounded to what would be a good dose for women. And generally, they're given as um, subcutaneous pellets, as injections. You can also have it as oral tablets that you put under your tongue. Um, but again, if you were out there looking for hormone therapy, this is a hormone you want to talk about, whether you're perimenopausal or menopausal. It can be used with estrogen and progesterone. Those are the best ways I think to use it in a combination when it's time for you to use estrogen. If you're too early for estrogen, you're perimenopausal, you're still bleeding, having your periods, it's not yet time to start an estrogen, you can use testosterone alone and still have a huge benefit from it because as your body breaks it breaks it down into estrogen, so you get a little bit more. So what's a woman to do? What's a girl to do? I mean, I just gave you a lot of options: pill, patch, ring, um, cream, troche, subcutaneous pellets, injections. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? It all depends on who you are. Um, so you have to talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, first of all, and talk to somebody that's going to listen to you. That's second. So they understand what are your needs. There's some women who are perimenopausal, you're still having periods, so you don't necessarily need an estrogen. You might need something to help your estrogen support, but you don't need an estrogen. But your weight is going centrally. You're losing energy. You have no libido. You need a testosterone. There's some women who maybe a testosterone is too. Thank you for joining. Do you want to take Diamond upstairs? please? Thank you. Thank you, sir. Did he use the bathroom? Okay, yes, he does. Please take him upstairs. Thank you all for entertaining me during this little interruption. But there's some women who testosterone is a little bit too much for them because you're still producing some, maybe not the same amounts as you were before, but that potent hormone of testosterone is a little too much. Well, you may need a lighter, less potent androgen like DHEA okay, to help you. And so those are knowing what the patient needs. Next is knowing what the patient desires, knowing what your desire is, and then also your financial means, because your insurance may not cover anything, right? And if you have health insurance, I just said testosterone is not FDA approved in this country for women, so it's not going to be covered at all for women. By insurance companies, but DHEA is a economical option, a more economical option. And then what are your physical limitations? What is your health status? You have to be healthy enough for hormones to reduce some of those risks that I talked about earlier, which are like blood clots or breast cancer. You have to think about the formulation, the way that you're using it, because that also impacts or can be impacted by your health, your health status. And so the route and the dosing of hormone therapy should be customized based upon the individual who is seeking it out. So I put this slide in here because I wanted to make sure I brought this point up, and I know Lena's going to talk about this in her section, which is no matter what we're talking about, no matter if we're talking about hormone therapy support, hormone therapy replacement, anything that's going to impact your hormones, we have to remember the basics. We cannot forget that, which is making sure our bodies are healthy, because an unhealthy body, no matter how much hormone replacement or hormone support that you're doing, an unhealthy body is not going to allow that replacement, allow that hormone support to act well. So you have to think about it in this regard, right? You're taking a hormone tablet, or you have an injection or whatever, you're getting it in whatever way, and your body's not healthy enough to actually receive and let that hormone work. Well, you're going to still feel just as bad as you were, or your body's not as healthy to help it receive and work. You're not going to be optimized. Your cells, your organs, they need to have the amount of energy, a certain amount of energy to enact those actions that you want it to do. So you can throw stuff at your body, but if your body doesn't have that baseline health status that it needs to actually function, you're kind of like, just pouring it down the drain. So we have to think about the basics. We need to make sure that we're eating fiber. The older we get, actually, the more fiber we need, the more healthier proteins that we need, the more micronutrients that we have to think about. We got to sleep. We got to drink water, and we have to move. We don't need to be on diets. We need to have healthy habits. That's more important. And we have to move our body. You don't got to do HIIT every day, but you got to think about resistance, and you got to think about movement, because a moving body is a living body, right? You need to keep your body nice and lubricated. So what are some of my favorite things when I talk about prescription? So I think about hormone therapy in a couple different ways. I think about pharmaceuticals that you can get from the pharmacy, behind the counter with a prescription. I think about over-the-counter adaptogens, and also phyto hormones that you can use to support what your body's already producing. And then some of the procedures that I do in my office, which would not necessarily be, are still medications, but they're not from the pharmacy. So you have tablets that you take by mouth or you put in the vagina. You have gels, creams that you can put in the vagina or put on the skin. Ultimately, I like to do things that are bioavailable. So what does bioavailable mean? I talked about this a little bit in our last session. Bioavailable just means that that molecule and that medication that you're getting closely resembles what you produce. It doesn't mean that it's more natural. It doesn't mean that it came from a plant. It just means that that molecule produces or mimics what you produce, so it's going to work the best. So I love bioidentical meds, and I love things that you don't put in the mouth, because when you put an estrogen in the mouth, it's going to increase your risk of blood clots. Testosterone, oral testosterone also, there's not a lot of things available on the market, and you can get a better effect when you put things in the vagina, honestly, or when you're putting them right underneath the skin. So for pharmaceuticals, I'd love Imvexi, Interosa, gels that you put on the skin, Bijuva. These are some of the things I have here on the screen. These are my go-tos when I'm talking about pharmaceuticals because they are the least risky for cancers and blood clots and are the most bioidentical. My favorite over the counter, so these aren't prescriptives. These are things that you would get, like you can go into the pharmacy itself and just pick it up. DHEA. Again, this is a weaker androgen. It's a weaker testosterone, but can be very effective for women, especially when you're early in using hormone therapy or early in perimenopause. It can ultimately boost and increase your natural testosterone levels. Equel, Estrovan, these are phytoestrogens. They contain phytonutrients from things like similar to like cabbage, bok choy, broccoli, cauliflower, where they can improve your estrogen metabolism. They have a couple other things in them too, but they're mostly phytoestrogens. We sell in our practice some estrogen support, libido lift, and there's some things that and like dim inside our libido lift. So these are dietary supplements to help support what your body is doing, and they can be used with hormone therapy, depending on what you're taking, with hormone therapy or without hormone therapy. If you have talked to me in the last 2 to 3 years, you know I am an adaptogen chick. I love adaptogens. Why? They just make you feel better. They're usually roots or minerals or other forms of supplements that just help put you in a better state of being. One of my most favorite adaptogens is ashwagandha, but there's so many other. Melatonin is considered an adaptogen. Soy is considered an adaptogen. Green tea is considered an adaptogen. So there are many options where you can just pick these things up in the grocery store and add them to your daily routine that will give you hormonal support. And again, whether you are on hormone therapy or you're not on hormone therapy, depending on what hormone therapy you're on, you can do these things, and they can definitely help you with hot flashes, with insomnia, anxiety. Anxiety can be a symptom of menopause or perimenopause, depression. They can help you with all these things because they are helping to impact how your body metabolizes what you're producing. One of the procedures that we do in our office, and this is honestly my absolute favorite way to give hormone therapy, is with subdermal pellets. Why is it my favorite way? Because the subdermal pellets are bioidentical, and they bypass the blood clot risk. And they last the longest. So you don't have to do something every day. You don't have to do something every week. You get your pellets placed months at a time. So every 3 months, every 4 months, and you're good to go. Very simple procedure that takes less than 5 minutes and can be not painless, but minimal pain because of the anesthesia that we use. And so whether you're someone who is perimenopausal or menopausal, whether you're someone who is has a history of breast cancer, has a high risk of breast cancer, has a history of blood clots, has a high risk of blood clots, has liver issues, just naming some of the things that we consider when we talk about hormone therapy. Whether you're someone that does or does not have these conditions, you still have the right to have a conversation about your hormone status and what can be done to alleviate your symptoms. We talked mostly about hormone therapy, but like I've said in this conversation, there are so many other options outside of hormone therapy to use to help perimenopause and menopausal symptoms. And so you're not alone and you're not without You're not without your options. And so once you're balanced, what's next for me is having the conversation also about sex, because hormone therapy, it ties into, or just having hormones that are managed ties into having a better way of being, a better life, but we should also be wanting to have better sex. And so just like there are a lot of options for hormone therapy, there are a lot of options also for better sex. So you get your hormones managed, and then you go down the line and continue managing other things with other procedures that we can talk about. All right. So, Lena, I'm going to turn it over to you. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I'm not um, missing any questions. Does anybody have any questions before I turn it over to Lena? I don't see anything in the chat right now.
I have a question. I'll start it off. I feel like you spoke about so many incredible tools. Let's say somebody went to their OBGYN and they want to have this conversation. Are all physicians well versed on all of these different options, or do we need to specifically go find like a menopause specialist? What do you recommend?
So that's a very good question. You know, if I let me just answer the question. I was going to use an analogy, but let me just answer the question. We are all, as OBGYNs, we are all well versed in women's health care. At the same time, we all are human, and we can't do everything. And some of us specialize in some areas more than others. And so I would say you have your OBGYN that you've likely been with for years, right? You start there, have the conversation there. If your questions are not getting answered to where it's going to make you better, you take it the level up. Ultimately, going to someone who does menopausal medicine and has that background and understanding is better bang for your buck, honestly, because you're going to be able to get something that's going to help you a bit better. There are a lot of physicians, and I'm speaking mostly about OBGYNs, because physicians as a whole, when it comes to hormone therapy, honestly, because of the studies done by the WHO, many physicians are not comfortable managing sex hormones in women, whether they're perimenopausal or not. And so you want to go to someone who, one, has an understanding of what they're doing, but if you would want to also go to someone who is very well versed in hormone management and hormone therapy. There are many of us out here, and I think the number of those of us who are concentrating on perimenopause and menopausal medicine. And I say medicine because a hot flash is not the only symptom of menopause. Cognitive decline is a symptom of menopause. Osteoporosis, osteopenia is a symptom of menopause. Inability to lose weight is a symptom of menopause. Depression, anxiety, losing your hair. All these things are caused because our hormones are changing. And so we can't just relegate it to you have flashes, you're menopausal. We treat that only. We got to think about how your liver functions now, how your kidneys function now, how your brain is functioning now. And so many of us are moving towards focusing on menopausal medicine, perimenopausal medicine, and so if you wanted to get the best bang for your buck, that's who you go to. But an OBGYN should be able to answer some basic questions. And then if you go to somebody and they say there's nothing I can do for you, then you need to run and find somebody else.
I mean, obviously, we all want to come to you, but I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, how we start that conversation with our doctors.
Yeah. And I think you start the conversation by you also advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself, because you should never meet somebody if you're in your I'm just going to throw a number out there, in your 60s, and they say you've aged out. You shouldn't. They should have something past that to give you. You should never meet someone and say, "Oh, you've had breast cancer. There's nothing I can do for you." There should be another conversation. We have enough tools in our arsenal these days to give something. And so, if someone's telling you that, then you need to find somebody else that is a little bit more in depth when it comes to the articles and literature, the new literature that's out.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions? I thought I would break the ice, and start.
All right, Lena, I'm going to stop sharing so that you can share.
Okay, perfect. Let's see here. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I can't see you or anybody else. I can only see this slide deck, but um, I want to say I thought that you provided some really great information, and I know I learned a lot that I can take and share with some of my clients and family members. And I think that we have some overlap. So I'm excited. It's almost like you gave a preview for some of the things that I want to talk about next. So let's get right into it. I am a functional medicine clinical nutritionist, and I have been practicing weight loss for probably close to 13 years. But the functional medicine nutrition is newer for me. So I've been in this world for about 2 years now. And I was thinking a lot about how in functional medicine, we talk about getting to the root cause. And I almost feel like that term is overused, just like balancing your hormones. I feel the same way. And you'll see in my portion of the slideshow, I use harmonizing our hormones because there is this fluctuation that happens, that should happen, right, all month long. But back to that root cause, I wish that we could think of a different term to use to get to the bottom of whatever these symptoms are. And I know I'm kind of saying the same thing, but I just feel like it's overused. And we're lucky that, a lot of the work that I do is working backwards to figure out why are we having these symptoms? What systems? And when it comes to perimenopause and menopause, it's a lot of the things that Dr. O already talked about. So our detoxification pathways, our different systems of the body. So we'll get into all of that in a second. But my portion of this slideshow is to talk about nutrition. So this is the nutrition edition. And what role does it play in perimenopause and menopause? So we obviously know, based off of a lot of the symptoms that we're feeling, that nutrition is a key player. And we have many ways to address the changes that we're going through. And all systems of the body are really impacted by the foods that we eat because all of the different macronutrients and micronutrients, like vitamins, if you think back to if you ever took an anatomy class, the Krebs cycle, how we produce ATP, everything in our body functions because of these micronutrients, vitamins. So they are the cofactors to how these systems work. So saying that, it's important to know what we're putting into our body and why we're putting into our body, and then we can kind of tweak those things depending on what symptoms we're experiencing. So I like to, refer to perimenopause, menopause as that reverse puberty. Instead of getting this influx of hormones, we're losing a lot of our hormones, unfortunately, but we do have strategies to make this experience a lot better, a lot more enjoyable. So, my portion today, we will talk about hormonal harmony, mood, mental health, bone and heart health, digestive, gut health, and weight management. And then we're going to finish up with sleep and some of the supplements that I tend to recommend to my clients. So, first things first, hormonal harmony, try to say that 10 times fast. It's important that we focus on foods like phytoestrogens. And Dr. O mentioned these a little bit when she was speaking, but those types of foods would be things like soy, flaxseed, lentils, chickpeas. We want to include these phytoestrogens in our diet because they mimic estrogen in the body. So when we're thinking about losing some of these sex hormones, we want to find ways to either stimulate the pathways that produce them or potentially replete whatever we're losing to a certain extent. So, phytoestrogens are important. And I know that with some of my clients, there's this hesitation of adding soy because of some of the research that was out there saying that soy can cause breast cancer. A lot of that information is really outdated, and the amount of soy that you would actually have to consume to put yourself in that area is a lot more than what the average person would eat. So I like to say, a couple times a week is usually pretty safe. to give you those benefits of those phytoestrogens. But of course, variety is the key here. We want to incorporate not just one of these foods, but several of these foods so that our body gets different exposures. So those phytoestrogens are super important because they do have the potential to lessen things like hot flashes, mood swings, night sweats, and who doesn't want a better night of sleep, right? The next thing when it comes to hormones would be your healthy fats. And I think many of the women on this call tonight probably grew up in that era where, if you eat fat, you get fat. You got to stay away, low fat everything. But we're finding obviously that is not true. Healthy fats are so important for brain development. They help reduce inflammation, they improve your mood. So we want to include those in the diet. And we can do that by adding things like fatty fish, seeds. If you've ever worked with me or you know me, I push seeds all the time. So flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, whatever kind of seed you can get in. And then, of course, your nuts. And the healthy fats are the backbone of your sex hormones and neurotransmitters. So it's really important that we get ample amount of healthy fat into the diet. And then the last thing when it comes to hormones that we like to focus on would be your B vitamins. And you can achieve this, through a healthy, diverse, colorful diet. But of course, there's always supplements out there that contain your B vitamins. So making sure that we have those B vitamins is so important. And I see this a lot when we talk about the mood issues. So the brain fog, the chronic fatigue, forgetfulness, so that's really where we want to focus on. Number one, including more of these colorful foods. So that would be like your fruits and your vegetables. But if you're not getting adequate amounts of those things, also, of course, your poultry and your fish, making sure that we're then supplementing with an actual supplement to make sure that we're kind of checking that box. So that's hormones. When we shift over to mood and mental health, you've probably heard a lot about magnesium. So magnesium is found in foods like spinach, almonds, pumpkin seeds, but we want magnesium for a few different reasons. If you've ever gone into the supplement aisle, you'll see there's 1,000 different forms of magnesium, or maybe you've never realized that before. So you might have this little pearl of knowledge that you will take away from tonight's session. But there are several types of magnesium, and we can use them to address different symptoms. So magnesium glycinate is one that I recommend to help relax muscles and get a better night of sleep. So if you are someone that's very high strung and you're spun up at night and you have your mind is going a mile a minute and you're thinking about all these things that you have to do the next day, magnesium glycinate is usually what I would recommend to just kind of bring you down a little bit, relax you, and hopefully allow a better night of sleep. Magnesium threonate is a different form of magnesium, and that is often used for mood. If you are experiencing that brain fog, sometimes it helps with that mental clarity. So that's magnesium threonate. And then magnesium citrate is what you would use if you were feeling constipated. So I always like to throw that out there because magnesium citrate really helps with bowel movements. And you don't want to pick that up and take that if you're trying to address other symptoms. So that's magnesium. Vitamin D is so, so important, especially as we head into the winter here and we're probably not outside as much. Our days are shorter. But I'm sure we both, Dr. You and me both, see a lot of vitamin D deficiency in the patients that we see. And unfortunately, it's linked to things like depression. Vitamin D also affects our immune system. So we want to make sure that number one, the best source would be getting out into the sunshine. But if that's not an option, then making sure that we're taking a vitamin D supplement. I always like to put, a little disclaimer in there that we want to be careful with our fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, and make sure that we don't overdo it because we store that in our fat. So if we're overdoing it, there is a potential for toxicity. It's pretty rare, but I do like to just throw that out there. Omega-3 fatty acids, I don't have them highlighted here, but They too are known for brain health and can improve mood, reduce anxiety and depression. And then, of course, are antioxidant rich foods. So think color when you think of antioxidants. So your berries, your leafy greens, your nuts. These are things that really protect the body against oxidative stress and inflammation. So we want to make sure that we have a diverse diet with a lot of variety and a lot of color. Ah, I'm to the end. I skipped a few pages. I'm sorry. Let me go back here. Okay, so next up is bone health. So, as we age and as we enter into perimenopause and menopause, bone health is a big thing that we would like to focus on to make sure that our bones are staying strong and we're reducing the risk of falling and breaking bones. So, calcium is important. When your estrogen levels decrease, your bone density can also decrease. And good sources would be your dairy products, leafy greens like kale, broccoli, usually like any of your leafy greens, and then fortified plant-based milks and tofu. Tofu is another nice thing to kind of add into the mix. I usually don't recommend a calcium supplement, Dr. O. I don't know if you do or not, but I think that if we have a pretty good diet, that we can address it through food sources and we don't need that extra supplement. I think if you're going to add a supplement, you should save it for some of these other things that you can't necessarily get through food. We already talked about vitamin D. So just making sure when you have that calcium, you're also getting that vitamin D as well. And then magnesium. So again, we've spoke a little bit about that, but just making sure that we're being intentional with the foods that are high in calcium, vitamin D, and magnesium addresses that bone health. Of course, with strength training too, that is super important the older that we get. So making sure that you're spending some time lifting up some heavy weights, and even doing some of that pounding, that's going to help build up that bone density as well. Heart health. So, heart disease risk increases during perimenopause and menopause due to those changes in estrogen levels. The other thing that I see a lot with my clients is they'll get their labs back. They haven't changed anything within their diet. Cholesterol's through the roof. Fasting glucose is now through the roof, and blood pressure changes. So, ways that we can address that: fiber is like the number one thing that I focus on when I get labs that show high total cholesterol. And you can get fiber in the diet by incorporating things like whole grains, quinoa, brown rice, oats, your vegetables, your fruits, things like your seeds. Chia seeds are really high in fiber. There's so many different things out there. There's supplements like psyllium husk. So anyway, there's lots of choices, which is great because who doesn't like having options, right? And then making sure that you're also incorporating more of those healthy fats to address your heart health. So that would be adding things into the diet like your olive oil, avocados, nuts. And then really like the almost the biggest takeaway is reducing refined sugar and processed foods because that also will help prevent that weight gain. It'll help to control your blood sugar levels. And the other thing that I talk a lot about in session when it comes to all of these things is the timing of our meals. So making sure that our body can almost expect when that next meal is coming and we're not skipping meals. So having a well-rounded breakfast and lunch and dinner, all of those things are going to set you up for success and prevent these diseases from appearing in perimenopause and menopause. Digestive health and gut health are kind of, they go hand in hand. But again, we're talking about things like fiber, very important. Another symptom we see quite a bit is constipation. So things kind of start to slow down a little bit. We want to increase that fiber, but anytime that you increase fiber, please make sure that you're also increasing your total water intake as well. Because if you do a whole lot of fiber, it's basically adding bulk to the intestines, but you don't want things to get too bulky. You want to keep things moving through. So just be sure to have lots of water. We usually recommend half of your body weight in ounces of water. And it's also not a bad idea to add some electrolytes into your water. Probiotics and prebiotics are another thing that really address that gut health. We want to make sure that every single day, if you could, you would be adding things in like fermented foods, yogurts, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut. That all supports your good bacteria in your gut. And there's that strong brain gut connection that we want to positively influence. The prebiotics are basically foods that you can eat to feed what's coming next, the probiotics. So those would be foods like garlic, onions, bananas, leeks, chicory root, asparagus. And again, just like with the probiotics, you want to have that variety because there's so many different strains of bacteria. And we want to make sure that we're giving our gut a chance to get exposure from all different types of bacteria. And there's so much research now on probiotics, which I just find totally fascinating, focusing on specific strains to address specific health conditions. So let me give you a quick example. My kids were all sick with pneumonia last week, all on antibiotics. But we're really intentional then about making sure that we're getting specific probiotics into them to replete whatever was maybe killed off during that antibiotic exposure. So it's a great idea to add those probiotics in. There's so many different options out there. And another good school of thought is to rotate them every 3 months or so that you're then introducing something new into the gut. And then weight management. So this is a big area that both Dr. O and myself work on with our patients. And if you've ever met with me or had a session with me, the biggest things that I preach are adequate protein intake, adequate fiber intake, and veggies. So making sure that we're getting lots of different variety and sources of those things. That protein is super important because it helps speed up our metabolism. So protein rich foods, your lean meats, eggs, beans, tofu, it speeds up that metabolism because protein is harder for our bodies to break down, but it also helps with satiety. So it keeps us feeling fuller for longer. Complex carbs, please don't be afraid of carbohydrates because they're a macronutrient. We need them to survive. So eating high fiber, low glycemic index carbs like vegetables, whole grains, legumes, that all helps too to manage blood sugar levels. Keep your energy levels the same so that you don't have that rise and fall in energy levels throughout the day. And then, of course, water. So, if we're increasing fiber, we want to add more water, but water actually helps with a lot of other things too, like bloating, headaches. We see a lot of headaches with perimenopause, right? The migraines that just show up out of nowhere. And then, of course, that dryness. So, it can really help to address those different symptoms. Sleep can be miserable in perimenopause and menopause because of the hot flashes. A lot of times people wake up between that 1 to 3 a.m., and that's usually triggered by stress. Our bodies just wake up during that time. So, using that magnesium, whether it's a supplement or focusing on those foods, melatonin rich foods, that's always a nice thing to add in. That would be things like that tart cherry juice. If you've seen that online or you've heard of people using it, you can make a little mocktail. I like to put some like lime flavored LaCroix in mine. It's a really nice flavor. Adding things like bananas and oats. Usually if I have a client doing a fruit, then I want to make sure that they're doing a protein or a fat with it so that we're shuttling that sugar to where it needs to be. But another great food that I don't think a lot of people know about is pistachios. Pistachios can also help to boost melatonin. So that's a nice little snack too before bed. Avoiding caffeine and alcohol because I think we all know the older that we get, it's harder um, to enjoy those, but maybe not enjoy it because it might taste good going down, but we pay the price when we have those alcoholic beverages. And it might be either difficult to fall asleep or you might be waking up several times either to use the restroom or just disrupted sleep from that alcohol and caffeine. So if you're going to have caffeine, make sure that you stop maybe around 2 or 3 o'clock to set yourself up for a nice night of sleep. And then supplement support. So I think that this is like the main area that, some people are like, yeah, I know all of that with regards to food, but what kind of supplements can I take? Or maybe the foods just aren't cutting it and you need some extra support. So some of like the most basic things would be an omega-3 supplement, a calcium supplement, a vitamin D supplement, your probiotics, a fiber supplement. Protein you could do through like a protein shake if you wanted to, or protein bars. But I think even more important are things like your creatine, your rhodiola, ashwagandha, which we talked about earlier, holy basil, schisandra, maca, and black cohosh. These are all really common perimenopause and menopause supplements that I often recommend to my clients just to take the edge off a little bit. Now, it's hard to say, I would suggest this one to everybody because part of the work that we do is very personalized. So we would really need to understand what symptoms that you're struggling with or what we're trying to address before just throwing out a blanket statement that you could pick any of these. It's like blindly throwing the darts at the board, right? So there are options and tools out there. I think that that is the biggest takeaway from tonight's session. You don't have to struggle through this reverse puberty. You're not the only one going through it. Lots of people go through it. Everybody goes through it, right? And it doesn't have to be miserable. With all of these tools and resources and with the right providers, it can really be a pleasant experience. So that is all that I have for my portion. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I'm gonna open up the chat session to see if we have anything in the chat. Lena, I'm glad that you said what you said. Everyone goes through it. And we as women, I feel that we may have more severe symptoms as we enter perimenopause and menopause. But just like men go through puberty, they actually go through their own form of menopause. It's called andropause. And so, the aging, the change in our hormone levels, and also our ability or inability to metabolize or metabolize as well as we used to foods or substances, can play a big role in how we don't feel our best. And all of those foods that you named are necessary for the body's function, and your hormones are like the icing on top.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need those micro and macronutrients for your body to function so that your hormones have something to work with. So you can't live long without being complete. And if we look at these blue zones and we think about the blue zones, what are they doing? They're living in a smarter way. You of all people know that I have a lot of challenges. I always say that in med school, that's where I started all my non-eating habits because I just work, right? And I will go meals. I can go a day and not have a drop of water because, in the OR, you can't drink, you got to operate, right? And so I have conditioned my body to do that. That is wrong. That's not the way to live. We have to think about not having a lot of chronic stress and de-stressing, not just acute stress, but putting ourselves in situations in which we can have moments in which we re-energize ourselves with healthy foods that make sense, not just quick bites, and the water that we need and the sleep that we need. And so they do it in blue zones, and that's how they're living longer and they're living better. And so I think this just reiterates that point that opportunity is here for us in this country too. We just have to make sure that it's part of our mindset to say that that's what we need to do. Your day's hard, there's a lot of work, I understand. But I heard a quote today. It said, you should, in your life, if you have to disappoint others so that you yourself are not disappointed, you better disappoint others. So we have to think about living better for ourselves and prioritizing ourselves and our health so that we can actually have the benefit of not just life, but like a happy life and a full life. Anybody have any questions? I think, let's see if there's any in here in the chat. Anybody posting anything? I'm so glad everyone's still in attendance. Thank y'all for joining us for this second part of our webinar. The first part is on our YouTube channel, Climax After Dark. And we're going to put this up there too. And you will also find some excerpts on Instagram. Um, we're both available at our offices and through also our socials to get to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for taking part in our webinar. Thank you for taking part in this mini consultation session. This is a passion for both of us. And if everyone here just pays it forward and given a little bit of this information to the next person, we've all done our part. So thank you all for attending. Lena, thank you so much. And I hope you all attend future webinars that we'll have starting next year.